open the meeting of the Parks and Recreation Committee. Introductions, beginning with Alicia.
Alicia Hammack.
Doug Neely.
Troy Bollinger. Brent Haverkamp.
Sean Datchler.
Karen Morey.
Derek Kugel.
Jeff Sargent.
Andy Crump.
Denise Conrad, staff.
And Don Robertson, staff.
And would other staff introduce yourselves?
John Waverly, I'm the Parks Maintenance Manager.
Rochelle Anderholm Parch, and I'm the Youth Advisory.
Thank you very much. All right, and Mr. Daniels has requested to speak on something not on the agenda.
Not on it.
Welcome, Bill Daniels.
Some old faces here and some new faces
You just
here.
couldn't stay away.
What do you mean by old?
Bill Daniels, Oregon City. I was really going to talk about your homework here for the next year or so under future agenda items. And it's long and it takes a while to get through even one item, let alone the wish list. And the one I wanted to speak to that I was willing to volunteer to help out with in a one-on-one or in a subcommittee basis would be under the dog parks, the OD off-leash dog parks. And I've had some experience with that. And I know enough information has come back already on the data that was set out by a survey that we really are in the position to move forward on making some decisions on where and how, and more importantly, when. There's a big demand, of course, from the community for just that kind of a opportunity for people to come to use our parks. A lot of people, of course, as you are aware, don't necessarily come here to use the dog parks because they're really not really considered an off-leash area. That's people that a lot of dogs do need that kind of control in a fenced environment. And Jonathan's got a big schedule ahead of him, and of course there's a little bit of money involved in getting those kind of facilities set up. So I just want to let you know that I think Lisa, who's not here tonight, but was willing to also be in that position to help on some sort of a subcommittee if that opportunity comes up.
Well, and at the end of the meeting, I'd already forewarned Don that I was going to ask that next month we focus on having Denise go over the survey with us and form a new subcommittee.
Very good.
So if we need some willing workers, you will hear from us.
All right, thank you. Good luck this year.
Thank you. All right, and we have no presentations. So approval of minutes for those of you who are now old members. Has everyone read the minutes of the last meeting? Any corrections or additions? Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Second. Okay. On minutes, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, election of officers. Elections are now open for the chair of the Parks and Recreation Committee. Is there a nomination?
Do we have to do the request as well?
Not right now, you don't have to.
I'd like to nominate Karen to continue for 2020 as chair.
Second. Oh, I guess I don't have to second. These are nominations.
Okay, it makes me feel better, so.
I'd like to nominate Sean Datchler as chair.
Okay.
And
You don't get to speak yet.
I do. I get to accept or decline a nomination. I'll decline for this year.
Any further nominations? We got to do it the right way, so we need roll call.
Certainly. Alicia Hammack.
And
Yes.
yes, okay. Wasn't sure what I said.
There's only one candidate,
Yes. Troy Bollinger.
Yes.
Brent Haverkamp.
Yes.
Sean Datchler.
Yes.
Derek Kugel.
Yes.
Jeff Sargent.
Yes.
Andy Crump.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to this year. All right, Vice Chair, and I'd like to nominate Sean Datchler. Do you accept that one?
As long as you're showing up to all the meetings.
Oh, yes, I will try very hard, Sean. All right, any further nominations? Hearing none, roll call.
Alicia Hammack.
Yes.
Doug Neely.
Yes.
Troy Bollinger.
Yes.
Brent Haverkamp.
Yes.
Sean,
Yes.
He can.
Karen Moore.
Yes.
Jerry Kugel.
Yes.
Jeff Sargent.
Yes.
Andy Crum.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much. We have our officers. All right, Buena Vista House. I'm still working on it. Would you like to introduce this, Don?
Sure, very briefly. The true question before you this evening is, does the PrAC wish to comment on this proposed nomination to the Register of Historic Places? If so, what would you like to say? A citizens group has put together a nomination for the Buena Vista Clubhouse to be included on the National Register of Historic Places. That nomination goes to State Parks, the State Historic Preservation Office, or SHPO for short. SHPO, in turn, looks for comments, and as the city, the host city, they look to the city commission and the mayor in particular for comments representing the community. This will be discussed also at the Historic Review Board, who in turn will also present comments to the State Historic to SHPO. The question is, would you like to add your comments? The topic will be taken up at the February 5th meeting of the City Commission. If you do wish to comment, I will pass those along so they will have those prior to that meeting and be able to incorporate them into your discussion.
Okay. And as a member of the Friends of Buena Vista House, I've asked Damon maybe to give a little opening to this, since basically we've just seen this on paper so far. Damon's someone that's been working very hard to get this nomination together.
Good evening, everyone. Damon Mabey, and congratulations on your volunteering to become important people. So the Buena Vista House has been, as you probably read through all the stuff, in its current site since 1930. For some strange reason, it hasn't ever made it to any of the two inventories of historic structures that the city had, both in 1980 and 2004 or something like that. It just didn't get registered. You know, as someone who's basically lived next to it for my entire life, it was Atkinson Park's my park, and the Buena Vista store was my store, which is now a bunch of condos. So, you know, when we saw that the building was essentially being abandoned, we just realized that it wasn't an appropriate thing to do for a structure that has significance to the city. You can read all the history about it, but basically, because of the clubhouse and the members, 15th Street exists. There's not a bunch of bridges going back and forth across Jefferson and Jackson and all that. That where it is was actually a peninsula with a deep canyon in between. So, you know, they stepped forward and said, this is what Oregon City needs. They got like the first street sweeper in the city. There wasn't a person sweeping. It's had a lot of cultural value to the city. The structure itself is fairly mundane, even though the buildings date back to 1880-ish. But it's what it represents that we're trying to preserve. We went to the city and said, hey, this didn't get locally designated. Can we do that? There was some discussion about that, and the basic answer was no. Since the city is the owner of the structure, they're the ones that have to advance a local designation. They're the ones who have to approve going to Historic Review Board. We didn't accept that answer, so we went to the next step above, which actually is the National Register. There's no state register, county register. It goes to the National Register. And so that's why we put together the application and are moving forward, because we would like to see the building preserved and brought back online as a revenue generating source for parks. Before it was closed, according to the information presented to the City Council, it was generating 5 times as much income as it would cost to operate. And right now, that's a good thing for parks. So that's where we're at. I'm willing to answer any questions if you have any about it, but that's the basic situation. Robert, or Dan, Don, geez, Joe outlined the basic, outcome, how it ended up here in front of PRAC so late. We would have gladly brought it to you if we were moving it up the line internally, but.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to be honest. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh,
I'd like to hear your honesty first.
I'm also a member of the Friends Group, so I'm going to give a very short introductory comment here. This conceivably can be a cost to the Parks Department. The plan of the Friends Group is with solid city support and the historic designation, we can go out and look for grants. Right now, without the designation and with doubt over the city's support for restoring the building, no grantor is going to give us any money. So, basically, the request here is, do we have comments? So, Don will be recording comments pro and con on the designation. So, Doug.
First of all, I want to thank the Friends Group for actually securing some money to get electricity into that facility. They did it on their own. The concern I've got, and I don't want it really into the report because I hope we actually support the effort in a formal way at this body, but the concern I have is the issue of potential cost. We have tremendous deferred maintenance. We've gone through that. We are understaffed. I think this is a mechanism to get funding to come in, but that's the thing that worries me most, is that we are not, I don't want to use the burden because that sounds wrong, but I know what happens is a lot of these historic houses end up on city property. That happened to the McLaughlin House, the Barclay House, the Ermatinger House. Fortunately, the National Park Service took over the McLaughlin House from the city. We weren't able to maintain it. Ermatinger, we finally were able to put that together, a very costly effort. And so that's my major concern, is the cost when we are so terribly unfunded. On the other hand, it has historic significance, and I don't know why it's not possible to get it on the local inventory. We've had individuals subsequent to 1980, well, I can think of one, who actually got their house on the local inventory. They invested a lot of money in studying the history and also invested in getting that house restored. That's my big concern.
Okay. Brent?
One of the things, when I was reading the documentation or the notes that Don sent out, I had more questions about how, what would be the plans for it once it made the National Parks Register, or if it made the National Parks Register. Was there a plan to fix it up? Because I think I read somewhere that it was deemed unfit or unstructurable somewhere in the report. And Damon, you mentioned that it could be a potential revenue generator. What is the plan on how to make it a revenue generator?
Well, to address both Doug's comment and yours, our estimates are between $250,000 and $750,000 to bring it up, because it needs to be brought up to ADA standards now, which means we need to put in a ramp. So we need to, tear the kitchen and bathroom apart and put in 2 bathrooms and all that sort of stuff. But in and of itself, without even being advertised, very heavily, it was generating, several $1,000s a year. So our plan would be to get it up and functioning and advertise it. You know, it's, if you take a look at Neighborhood Next Door on Facebook, people are always looking for small venues to have birthday parties, to have an anniversary. I had my wedding there. I used the park up above as the venue, and you know, and then we had the reception down below. Not everybody can afford or wants the volume and cost of you know, the center at the bottom of 15th Street, or you know, the senior center, and they might just be booked on those days that they want them. So I think it'd be very easy to turn it into a fairly steady revenue generating stream. I rented the entire weekend for $100, so that's clearly underpriced with current stuff. So and that was just that was in 2013. So there's a lot of potential there for it. There's a lot of sunk cost in bringing it up to speed, but that's true of everything. I mean, at least this will bring in money. A slide and swing set doesn't bring in a dime. So, and the other thing I would say is your deferred maintenance is you gotta start somewhere. So why not start where people are interested? I mean, I'm not saying that they're not interested in Chapin and all that, but you got an active group trying to do something. It seems like that's a logical place.
And I was going to say thank you for saying that, because I never even thought of it as a potential revenue maker. So
Anybody else want to poke the request to speak button?
No, but I have a question. When a lot of times when you do the National Registry, at least my understanding, and I can be completely wrong here, there's restrictions or requirements with that, right? So are there, and to tie it into the renovations, that $250,000 to $750,000, are there then deadlines that come with that? We're on the National Registry, you have to do this by a certain amount of time.
No, the requirements that the National Registry imposes is, and I think it was in your packet, is you have to follow state and local guidelines. You have to get permission from the local government in order to demolish the structure. Well, we're the local government, so, interesting, the one difference between the local register and the national is the local register has a specific requirement forbidding demolition by neglect, which means you can't just let the building rot and then say, oh, it's rotten, trying to tear it down. The National Register doesn't have that requirement. You can let the McLaughlin house fall apart and just say, oh, and it turns into a plaque. Here used to be the McLaughlin house. We want it to get local designated, and we want to get it fixed, and we want to, you know, turn it into something. But the 3 or 4 requirements that the National Register puts on it are all requirements that already exist.
So the cost you're talking about is a cost that we will incur when and if we're ready and choose to incur it because we want to, because we're ready to.
Right. And one of the things that we're doing as a friends group is we're lining up contractors who are willing to do the job. We're getting actual estimates. The $250,000 to $750,000 is the difference between our estimator doing an estimate and the city's estimator doing an estimate. And we're now actually getting contractors to come in and bid on specific parts of the job, which are, you know, some are lower, some are higher. We're lining up volunteers to do stuff. So a lot of that cost can start to decrease as we get, you know, Home Depot to donate the lumber for the siding repair, as we get, you know, Carpenters Union to come in and do the framing work. I mean, those are all people that we're reaching out to find out what we can do to make it an acceptable thing and not make it a 10 or 15 year job to bring it up to speed.
And why are they willing to donate these materials? Because I asked them to donate for my projects at my house, and they said no.
I was just throwing ideas out there. We do have a contractor. In fact, it's on the OC Chit Chat, I think, where somebody posted about, you know, hey, don't forget about this clubhouse. It's the hidden gem. And a construction company said, hey, anything you need us to do, we'll volunteer the labor to repair. So that's at least the labor cost that's down. Now, of course, materials are a different thing. But we're reaching out. We're trying to put that together so that we can, when the time comes, probably not in time for this budget, but be able to say, look, here's a package of things to do to, we got to fix 4 piers underneath it to make it a stable structure. We got power back. We got to get an ADA ramp in. Those are all basics just to get the structure rentable.
Can't all this be done without the designation, though?
It could.
What's the value of having the designation then?
The tens of thousands of dollars of historic preservation grants that become available.
So that is then a requirement for those grants, is to have the designation?
Yeah, they don't exist without the historic designation.
Okay. And then once the grants are received, it looks beautiful, it's done, it's over. Now, does the designation have any value to us? Not that we would remove it, I'm just saying, is it, other than that, is there any ongoing benefit down the road?
None that I'm aware of currently, but there might be some maintenance grants.
Okay.
It has value in that we can, rent it out as a historic structure.
Okay.
So which may mean a little extra
Some marketing?
Yeah.
Potentially? Okay.
Alicia?
I have some questions in regards to it being a rentable facility. So whose responsibility would that be? Would that be the Friends Group, or would that be the Parks and Recreation Department?
It's a parks facility, so it would be parks all the way.
And then with that, is there, how many parking spaces are adjacent to that site?
4, I believe. But there's also on-street parking that's parallel.
And what is the capacity of the site itself?
You mean like the fire marshal's?
Inside fire marshal?
I don't know. It's 1,000 square foot structure. So my estimate of other similar size would be about 60. But what I did for my wedding is I set up tables outside. There's a relatively low level area outside. We set up a couple extra tables out there, and it was a beautiful sunny day, and that's where they went.
So for a group to rent the facility, there would be a neighborhood impact in terms of the turnover from rental to rental if there were multiple rentals within a day, within a particular day or weekend or week. And then when you said there was revenue that was generated from that, did that take into account all the staff time that went into it in terms of the processing, the permitting, the paperwork, the site cleanliness, the ongoing repair, that rentals can impact a facility much differently than how we use, there's much more wear and tear, I guess?
Yeah. I don't know the answer to that. All I know is that when the previous parks director put up the slide, it showed revenue being at $3,000 to $4,000 a year. And the only numbers that was spoken of as a cost was the roughly $500 a year for the electricity. So first off, I would say that the parks people are already in the park cleaning the park. So adding 1,000 square foot building would necessarily be that much, assuming that it's not trashed.
Well, it's a different crew that does the work typically for that. And then I guess I'll just make one comment. I would just be concerned for the Parks Department to add one more potential deferred maintenance issue in the long run. There's so much deferred maintenance already existing within Oregon City, and then in the long run, once this gets fixed up, it'll be great for a while, but then potentially it could decline, and it would be yet another asset that would need to be maintained. That's just a comment.
It's been in the city's control since 1976-ish. So for 50 years, it didn't take a whole lot of maintenance. They put 2 roofs on it. So, no, 1 roof, 99. And that's true of any structure that the parks has, whether it's a gazebo, whether it's a play structure, whether it's, the park's office. If they own it, they got to maintain it. And that's a public trust as well as just a duty of it. So
I just make the comment that as someone who manages multiple rental facilities, the impact and the cost is much greater than what most people realize, and in not only internal maintenance of the facility, as well as the equipment, as well as the adjacent property and park impact, and then the relationships within the neighborhood. So I think it's a much more complex issue in some respects. So thank you for bringing all the information you have today.
Okay, so we've got a rather extensive agenda tonight.
Yes.
May I suggest that we go around? The question is, do you or do you not support recommending to or supporting the historic designation to SHPO.
I'm going to make the clarification. You're making the application, is that right?
Yes, the Friends.
So it would be the city, we're not supporting the city doing it, we're supporting this group, the Friends group, doing so, as I understand it.
It would be supporting the application going forward.
Yeah.
And so the city commission will be the ones making the formal comment on your behalf, but we'll be passing along any comments you may have to inform them.
Right.
Okay,
Including the concerns that we have,
I'm sorry?
including the concerns that we've expressed.
Correct, and I've made a note of all the ones so far.
I will move to support the effort of the Friends Group to seek national register designation of the Hermitage House. I'm sorry, the Vista House.
Okay, is there a second?
I will second that.
All right, and since there is now a motion on the floor, there are two more requests to speak. And I love it, for some reason, Sean and I are getting different displays, so combining the two, Andy.
To Alicia's standpoint, it sounds like IF Rentals also seems like a simple business decision. Is there a way that you could put together a business proposal? I mean, if you got a cost outlay and if you're going to increase revenue, if it pays off in a number of years, it makes sense. If it doesn't pay off, it doesn't make sense to me.
Sean?
I think that for us to vote to make a recommendation, as Doug stated, which is really simply one line endorsing the historic designation request, that it either needs to be unanimous to carry some weight, or we shouldn't do it at all. And I'm personally not in favor of the motion as stated, based on the other concerns that have been, multiple people have mentioned relating to the financial state the department is in, and the financial issues that this particular building could put on the department. So if the motion was amended to acknowledge those elements, that, you know, we discussed that and we are deeply concerned with these particular elements with the overall project, but we endorse the designation, then I would be in favor of it.
Would you like to say that as an amendment?
So you want to voice that as an amendment?
Restate that short.
I'm happy to voice
shorter
that
as an amendment.
Yeah, specific then? I mean, could you, I move that?
Let's see, so Doug's is supporting the designation, and the PRAC does want to recognize or acknowledge the concerns of the costs that could be put on the department by continuing this. I mean, frankly, currently, I'm going off on a tangent, but there's other options here. Whether they're good or bad, there are still other options. You could razz the building, and to the parks budget, it would be, it would probably help the budget. And so acknowledging that, if we're going to move forward, we need to.
I'll accept the amendment to the motion.
Amendment actually needs to be voted on too.
If the motioner agrees to it, and I do so, does the second agree to it?
That would be Derek.
Second degree?
I want to know, you know, what is the cost to, the increased cost to the city by agreeing to support the registration? Is there an increased cost right now?
They still own the building.
At what point, you know, where is the increased cost? What changes by us supporting what this gentleman is asking as a group?
That's actually a really good question. The city owns the building. It's the responsibility of the Parks Department, one way or the other.
Right. If I can take a crack at answering the question there. Karen is correct. The city does own the building. It is correct that it is within Atkinson Park and it falls under our purview to take care of the facility. At this point, there isn't significant daily maintenance expenses associated with it. There's the electricity bill, but other than that, there really isn't a lot of maintenance associated with it unless it gets vandalized. And then we have to go out and paint over, or clean up, or take care of whatever that vandalism is. In the event that the building does get restored at some point in time, then there will become significant responsibilities for maintaining it. As was pointed out, we'd have the responsibility of cleaning it up after every use. We'd have the responsibility of making the booking assignments. We'd have the responsibility of promoting it if absolutely necessary. And then, of course, just the day-to-day maintenance to keep it up in operation shape and something that we're proud of and not something that we're embarrassed by. So, until it gets repaired, fixed up, and becomes available to public, it's more of a minor periodic and annual cost associated with it. But once it is repaired and taken care of, then it takes on its own life. And one would have to look just a block away to the Ermentinger House. It was a facility that was, my understanding, predating me, it was in a terrible state of repair. There was questions whether it was going to survive or not, from what I understand. The city bit the bullet, decided to make the improvements. We have a full-time or at least a partial staff person assigned to that. We offer tours. I can assure you that the amount it costs us to do the tours is considerably more than the revenue it generates to do those tours, but it's a program that the city is committed to and that we will continue to carry out. It's one thing to say, yep, we'll make a bunch of money on this. It's another thing to make any money on this. That's just the reality of the situation. There's a lot of variables that would need to fall into the right places to get it to go that way.
Okay.
Did that answer your question, Derek?
No.
No, okay. Okay, I'll try again. Short answer, there's not a lot of expense to it as it sits. Long answer is it becomes considerably more expensive the further.
Well, that wasn't my, maybe I wasn't clear. I believe we were being asked about the National Register application and if we support that. If we do support that, I don't think it changes anything as far as the city.
No, not on the short term.
And in the long term, we're going to be discussing that, which we've done already for at least 6 months I've been here.
Yes.
At length. I don't see where this, what's in front of me saying, do I support Damon and then the National Register application changes anything as far as the city is concerned.
It does not have any significant changes at this point. I think our speaker highlighted one of the biggest advantages is it does make it grant eligible.
So I only see a positive on it. I don't see any cost to the city at this moment, and it only increases the possibility of grants if we go down that line in the future.
Okay.
Okay. So can we restate the motion as amended and recorded? Where are you on the motion?
I will do my best. The original motion was to support the application going forward. And the amendment, as I understood it, was to recognize the additional burden placed upon the department at later dates. Okay. Did I capture that or paraphrase that adequately?
That worked.
Much better than I said it.
Okay. So, roll call?
Alicia Hammack.
With that amendment, then I'll say yes.
Doug Neely.
Aye.
Troy.
Yes.
Brent.
Yes.
Sean.
Aye.
Derek.
Recused.
Yes.
Jeff.
I'm never
Yes.
friends.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate that.
All right, thank you all. And down to the next one. Rochelle, you are on and on. Fee adjustments for camp activities. Sure, yeah.
Oh, we're prepared.
Oh, yes.
You even get the lights.
Oh, wow. Okay, everybody flip your button.
We have some.
Okay, so I'll just take a moment to introduce myself again. There's some new faces. And so my name is Rochelle Anderholm Parsh, and I'm the Aquatic and Recreation Manager for the department. And my responsibilities include the management of the Oregon City swimming pool, the Ermentinger House, and then there's a team that I work with that also puts on special events, like movies in the parks. We've got the concert series, youth programs and sports, and then youth camps. And so that's the reason I'm here this evening, is to talk about our youth camp fees. So we have not conducted a fee analysis since 2005. And at that time, there was also a resolution passed, 519, that we use still to this day as a mechanism to raise our annual rates 3%. So this has worked to raise our rates annually, but it hasn't aligned us with the current market analysis of what our camps we're charging the public. So as you can see under the market analysis table there, we took surrounding communities and similarly structured camps, and we averaged out to the low end to the high end. And as you can see, the low end is $549 an hour rate, and then $973 is an hourly high end. The next table is our average rates, and so as you can see, the low end is $395 hourly rates for our camp programs, and $514 would be the non-resident rate. So our summary of findings doing this comparison, we are 28% under the low market comparison, and if we wanted to take our current rate of $395 and adjust it to get to the low end of market comparisons, we'd have to raise our rates 40%. So there's a couple options to consider tonight, and one is if we want to continue to subsidize camps at a 20%, approximately 20%. The other option is to raise and increase our camp fees 40% over 2 years. And option 2 is to raise our camp fees 40% effective July 1st. And so just looking at and analyzing those numbers just a little bit further, so if we looked at option 1, our increase the first year would put us at $4.75. Our cost recovery would be at 97%. And if you're interested in the cost recovery analysis and methodology, there is an attachment A that explains a little bit to how we reasoned our way to and came up with some of our cost recovery ideas. So the second year, we would be at $5.69 an hour, and we'd be at 115% cost recovery. The second option, which would be a 40% increase effective July 1st, would result in $5.53 an hour, and that would put us right at the low end of the comparisons. So what the public would see, based on each of the options, to give you an idea, if 40%, the option 1, 40% over 2 years, if this went into effect July 1st, the first year, the community would see a $24 a week increase on their camp fee. The second year, it would result in an $18 increase. So 14 the first year, or 24 the first year, 18 the second. 40% increase would result in a $39 weekly rate for camps. So having laid out the different options, one of the things we would like for you to discuss tonight and that we're recommending is either a choice between option 1, which is to raise the fees 20% this year and next, or 40% effective July 1st. So I'll open it up for questions if you guys have questions.
Yes, Sean?
What's your recommendation between option 1 and 2?
I think option 1 is a good option because I think it'll be more palatable for the community. And additionally, that second year, we'd be realizing 115% cost recovery, which will put us ahead as opposed to option 2.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Alicia?
And in the cost comparisons, did you compare it to Eastham Community School rates and where what their hourly rates are versus what the Oregon City, what yours are?
Yeah, we actually took a look at that, and the reason we didn't use that as a comparison is because their programs were set up from anywhere from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. So the comparisons that we pulled from were similarly structured camps that had roughly the same amount of hours. They were providing field trips, and so we tried to have as like as possible where the kids would swim every day, and so those were the closest and where we drew our comparisons.
And then in terms of at the current rates that the camps are at, how is enrollment? Is it at max enrollment or is it average?
Yeah, so we are full with wait lists. So we could offer more camps and probably still.
And just two more questions, sorry. And then I guess in terms of scholarship options, so if there are families that are participating, what is the current opportunities for scholarships? Would that remain the same, or would that potentially increase with the additional generated revenue?
We currently have a scholarship program, and it's for Oregon City residents. We hadn't looked at increasing the opportunity based on the increases of these fees. But we're very generous with our scholarship applications if people apply, and there's a process they go through, so.
And I guess my last question would be in terms of the communication of this to families. I know, I have a son, and we're always we're already planning out the summer, and in terms of what our budget is and such. When do the guides go out in terms of the brochures, and in terms of how much lead time do families have in terms of whether it's option 1 or option 2?
Yeah, the information would go in the summer trail news, which, I don't have that off the top of my head when the summer trail news comes out.
Typically
May, okay. And then what we would do is we've, depending on if this is approved or recommended, we've come up with a marketing timeline of how we would get it out on Facebook, how we would educate, flyers at our facility, and we have previous email lists of camp participants, and we'd also do, a heads up and just make sure that we would definitely try not to surprise people with the increase, so.
Thank you for all your questions.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah.
Garrett?
A couple, and it kind of goes with what Alicia said, maybe not the first one. As it stands right now, are we losing money?
Yes, okay, so on attachment A, I get kind of excited about cost recovery. I don't know if you guys do, but it's if you look at attachment A, it talks about how we're currently at about 82% cost recovery, so we are losing money. We're subsidizing the programs at about 20%, including indirect costs.
And this goes on along with the scholarship. Not being familiar with the camp attendance and the mix, do you anticipate or have you looked at, is this going to remove the possibility of some folks not being able to go?
I honestly don't think that this will affect. And then we make sure to advertise the scholarship assistance programs, and so no, I don't think so.
Derek or Troy?
Sorry, I don't have a button.
I know you don't.
So it's either raise my hand or just yell. And sometimes I do either or. So I don't have a screen that I'm looking at, so I'm kind of having to, and I can't scroll here that I'm used to. So this is just camps we're talking about?
Correct.
Not other fees across the board that okay.
Just camps at this time.
How did we get here? Did we just avoid some increases in the past, or did everyone just jump ahead of us, or how do we get to where we're this far behind everybody else?
So when I think the resolution was in 2005, and that was our mechanism to raise the fees 3%. And when I started, we were rescuing the camps, I guess you could say. And so part of our goal was to stabilize the camps into a really quality program for the public. We've added participation. And so we're finally to a point where we've stabilized the programs, and now it's time to evaluate where we are with the market comparison. And it's become a priority, and I think in the past it wasn't a priority, and so now we can justify the fee increases by the quality that we offer.
Okay.
So,
couple thoughts I have. You guys are on the front lines of this, so we can tell you all the things we want to tell you, but at the end of the day, it's your young people that are on the other side of that counter that get to deal with the moms and dads that are like, what?
Yeah.
You're doing what to my fees? Right? Then we don't have to deal with that. My day job is marketing. And And so when marketing, when I tell my customers, we're going to raise your fees 20%, which by the way, I like option one better. It's a whole lot more palatable. But when I tell my customers I'm going to raise your fees 20%, I better tell them why and what I'm going to give them. And when the why is because I undercharged you 40% last time, they don't care, right? Because I gave you more than I charged you for before, they don't care. Nobody is going to sit back and go, oh, so it was a little bit free before, then I'll gladly pay you more. Nobody cares. So I think we have to be prepared to tell them what we're going to give them more. And maybe the more is more scholarship opportunities. And I don't know where that money comes from, so I don't know if there's more money to give them. And I don't know if we're using all the scholarship opportunities we have, so if we're not using all of them, maybe the more is just there's already more available to them, so maybe we just advertise more and maybe if we're using 80% of what's available, we're just be prepared to use 100% of it, or 95, or whatever there is. So maybe the more is not more scholarship money, but just using more of what's available. And maybe the more is more classes. Since we're already at capacity, like we have waiting lists, maybe the more is, we are charging you more, and we're going to give you more of those evening classes or those weekend camps or whatever that you wanted, or whatever the option is. We are going to do that 8 a.m. class that we didn't want to do last year. And I know that means more FTE, and I know that means more, whatever. But if we're able to pay for those now because we're not 40% under, then the numbers are going to work out, right? That we can afford the FTE because it all pencils now, which, that all means more jobs for people, and that all means the lights are going to get paid because everything pencils. So it's just a matter of having the bodies at that point. Hopefully we can have the bodies to do that. So, my suggestion is we have to be ready to give them more. You're going to charge me more. What are you going to give me? We're going to give you more camps, more availability. We're going to run later. We're going to run earlier. And I don't mean longer hours, but I just mean more availability for the camps. We're not going to give them 8 days a week. We're only still going to give you 7 or 6 or whatever it is. So anything we can do to say give them more, whatever that means.
And I was remiss in mentioning that part of what this also would change is exactly that. We would be adding some additional hours to the pre-K camp and then making our Rivercrest camp longer based on community feedback.
Okay.
So we would.
So if we're giving you more hours, they were 5 hours a day last year. Now they're going to be 6 or whatever, because it has to be value. Because if we just say, well, because we undercharged you, they don't care. They're still going to come across the counter at you with both hands.
Right.
Like, we got to be ready.
Doug? Thank you.
My request for to speak thing isn't working. He doesn't have a screen.
No, that's why I just keep going. I just go because there's nothing that says time up.
We're going to start turning that 3-minute timer
I'm just
on.
going. And you think I'm going to listen to that too? I'm just going to go.
But I'm not a marketing person, but if our camps are full, if somebody felt they didn't like the fee increases and didn't come, I think somebody else would replace them.
Well, true, with the waiting list.
Yes.
But we don't want to have the mentality of, well, if you can't do it, someone else will.
Okay, is there a motion from anyone?
Can I ask one more question?
You may.
So in terms of casual staff, like the camp counselors, I know in Portland we're on an accelerated wage increase as of July 1. Our wages are going up $1.30 an hour for every casual staff person in Oregon City. In terms of casual staff, is that an impact to your staff? I'm not sure.
We experience the minimum wage increase every year, and that was part of what also initiated this analysis and probably future analysis of other programs, is that the eventually we'll be at the $15 an hour.
Yeah, we're on that accelerated to 15, because I know that's a massive impact. And then to one comment that Troy was making, I know one phrase I use a lot at work is expenses are outpacing the revenues. And I think that the public really does understand that. Everything's more expensive to operate your pools, the staffing, all the equipment. There's nothing that's more affordable in recreation these days. Yeah. So I don't even think you have to add too much to it.
Right.
People understand it because we all feel it. Yeah. So thank you for this thoughtful presentation.
Yeah. Sean's got a question.
One quick question. Sure. Do you have a rough percentage of in-city versus out-city on these camps?
I don't off the top of my head, but that's an easy report to run, and I can provide that to Dawn to pass on to the group if you're interested. So,
The idea of low price made me think maybe people are coming from outside the area to supplement that.
yeah, that would be interesting to know.
Yeah, good point.
Okay,
Awesome.
so would somebody like to move that we adopt option 1?
So moved.
Second?
Second? Any further discussion? And clarifying, option 1 is the 20% this year and the 20% the following year. Okay, Don, you want to take roll call?
Certainly. Andy?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
Derek?
Yes.
Yes.
John?
Aye.
Brett?
Yes.
Troy?
Yes.
Doug?
No, yes.
Yes.
Right. I count that as
Okay.
unanimous.
All right, so 1 down, now to movies.
Okay, next. Just as fun. Since about 2015, PRAC has reviewed our movie selections that we send out to the public to vote on. And to ensure that movies are family friendly, we choose PG or G rated movies. And provided is the list that if this group likes what they see, we will make the voting link active, and the public will be able to start to vote for their top 4 choices, and the top 4 choices will play on the dates provided. So if you want to take a look, provide any comments if you have any, but approve the list today would be great, and we'll move forward.
I don't have a specific question on the list, but I do have a question over the question that came up last year about how we make sure that there's city residents who are voting, that outsiders aren't stuffing the ballot box. When you vote, does it at least ask you for your zip code?
You know, we could put that on. That would be an easy thing to add to SurveyMonkey if we're curious where people are
Then they
voting
can just
from.
lie about their zip code.
That's a
That would
good
fix it.
idea.
They could, but sometimes it might prevent
They have to look up and lie about it.
It might stop a few ballot stuffers.
They can vote from one computer and then it recognizes that IP address. So if they're really wanting like the Princess Bride, they would have to find another computer to vote. And so that's
Well, I just use my tablet,
dedication.
my phone, my laptop.
Just a quick question, since you're here, last year we asked this question, you weren't here to answer it. You added the End of the Oregon Trail as a new site last year, and then you added Clackamas Community College, I believe, last year. And I see Clackamas is out, but the End of the Oregon Trail is in. Could you give, especially for people that didn't get to hear this, the whys of that?
Yeah, so just a quick clarification. So the End of the Oregon Trail has been a repetitive site. Last year, what we did is we added, instead of Chapin, we added the CCC with the partnership. And it was a trial partnership to see how that would work out as far as site logistics, access to bathrooms, security support. And what we found, and especially in light too of the Chapin bathrooms, the new Chapin bathrooms, that we found that we were able to have definite security parameters, like that was our contract to manage. We had access to the bathrooms where we knew we could unlock them and lock them, where that was something that we weren't necessarily in control of at CCC. So I think there's potential for future partnerships with CCC, but we did find that the program worked better in our city-owned sites. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Doug?
There's one question, well, a comment and then something else I want to compliment them on. Our zip code is not a city zip code, it's a post office zip code, and it extends out into Redmond and so
true.
forth, so that's
Yes,
not necessarily
I do
an
know.
indication of them all being within the city. It always impresses me that you're able to get a lot of very recent movies, and I'm surprised they come available so soon for these purposes. But I'm also pleased to see that you have movies from the past, too.
Yeah.
Alicia?
Question, in terms of the selection of the movies, they seem very dominant culture. So question in terms of, is there an equity committee within the Recreation Department or within the city to acknowledge the diversity that is continuing to grow within Oregon City and the adjacent communities in terms of making sure that our children and families are seeing some representation of themselves as well.
Yeah, no, that's actually, thank you for that perspective. There's not, to answer your first question, not within the Parks Department at this point. There's no equity task force but in light of that comment, it would be a really inclusive, equitable thing to add something that would include the different diversities. Absolutely, yeah.
And then one other comment, I'm assuming the different selections, especially the very, very recent, is taking in consideration, like on Swank and some of the Swank.com and some of the other ones, in terms of the various like Disney limitations that they have for the movies. Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, anybody have anyone in particular? Oh, excuse me, yes.
I tried this.
That's okay, Brent.
So I'm curious, with the 3 different parks that are listed, Wesley, Lynn, Chapman, and the end of the Oregon Trail, are some of those parks more popular with people? Do they attract larger crowds?
It depends. So Wesley Lynn is in the heart of a neighborhood, and so we will get a large crowd at Wesley Lynn, but the demographics of that crowd is younger, unsupervised, and so we like to cater to that age group. And with the end of the Oregon Trail, it draws the families that will come out. There's not a playground, and so they plan to come out, they eat, they hang out for the movie. And so that was part of the reasons of changing the different sites. And then Chapin, same thing, draws neighborhoods. So we were really trying to diversify like where in the city we were offering the program.
To tie in with Alicia's point, are different diversities and different ethnic groups more popular at some of these than others, and how could the movies relate to them when they're chosen for the parks?
I don't know. I can't answer that. I'm not sure. So,
Okay.
But it's something to definitely keep an eye on. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, yes. Yeah.
Where did the list of movies come from? Was this voted on, or was this something that staff came up with?
Staff got to pick
staff came up with
Yeah.
Okay.
And is this, I wasn't understanding, is this the list, or is this the list to vote on?
This
is the list for the city to vote on?
Yep. So this will go public if you guys like the list.
If we like the list? Mm-hmm. So we get a vote first, is that what you're asking?
Well, you have to go on your own computer and vote.
Yes, you
don't tell me which 4 you like.
So we get our private vote, and then you're going to make it public. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
You can go online like the rest of the people
Yes.
do.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, if you like the list in
I thought you were asking us to vote tonight. I see what you're saying.
So this one I think can go on consensus. I'm not hearing anybody demand that any particular movie be removed.
Well, there's Frozen. I mean,
that's what I was trying to clarify. If you're asking us if there's something on there we do like or don't like or whatever, that's what I wasn't sure if you're asking us.
If there's anything that strikes you as that you would want removed, like it might be offensive or
Personally, I did not like The Greatest Showman. I saw that movie and I thought the abusive and racial overtones of that movie were appalling. I walked out of it.
Okay.
So that was me personally. I watched with my girlfriend. She did not see what I saw, so she did not agree. But I thought the racial overtones were just horrid in that movie.
And I'll have to say, I absolutely adore The Greatest Showman.
Most people loved it for the dancing and music, and I saw past that.
Thank you.
So.
I thoroughly love that movie. I don't think it's appropriate. I think it's more adult than what we usually show. So I actually would also recommend removing it.
Okay.
Yeah, most people loved it for the dancing and music, but I saw past that and didn't like the rest of it.
I never saw it.
Now you're curious, aren't you?
Neither have I. What about an other option so that people?
A write-in?
Yeah.
Write-in.
Okay. Yes. Do you want to vote on another option?
Can you explain explain your process for actually locating these and determining what the fee is and what the fees are?
Yeah, so we work through Swank, and there's also another company that we're using to access things like The Princess Bride. Swank doesn't provide that. The license fees will range anywhere from about $400 to $700 for each movie license. And we go about choosing these by, we ask our staff of 40 teenagers and what kind of movies. And so we consolidate a list amongst the team and of what we think the community would like, and then we present it.
What is Swank?
Swank Productions is a movie licensing company that you pay them lots of money, they send you a DVD, and then you get to play the DVD and you send it back. So.
Kind of like what Netflix used to be.
Yeah.
A lot more expensive.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of like Redbox, but it's a little bit more money.
All right, so can we have a consensus with the list without The Greatest Showman? Nods, hands,
Yes.
smiles. You have your recommendation?
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay, and Don, who is handling the fee adjustments?
With us this evening is Jonathan Waverly, who's going to speak to you about hopefully adjusting some special event costs.
Okay.
Welcome, John.
Good evening. For those of you who don't know me, I'm John Waverly. I'm the Parks and Cemetery Maintenance Manager. Our fee increases are not as in depth. They're pretty basic, and that's that this year we received notice from our supplier of restrooms for our special events that we would be receiving an increase in our costs. And due to that, we discussed very similar to what you guys just heard from Rochelle, is that we're not going to be operating at a deficit, so therefore our fees are going to have to increase. It's pretty straight across the board. So these are the restrooms and the fees that occur when someone is wanting to have a special event at one of the parks. So we looked at other providers to see if there was a possibility that we would have a lower cost, and this is still our lowest cost that we were able to find. So we're just looking for support to make sure that we're not running in the black.
You are.
Or in the red.
Yes, stay out of the red. There's also the recommendations from the office staff about the cancellations.
Yeah, so this, again, very similar. We're looking for support. Our current policy, when someone goes to do a special event application, there's a non-refundable fee for the processing of the special event application. That's just due to staff's time processing everything that goes into a special event permit. But something that had occurred a couple of different times is that our cancellation policy. So in the event that an event is canceled within 14 days of the event, fees will be retained. The person will receive a refund of their deposit fee, but we were just looking at what is the cost of us putting in the time, energy, and effort to prepare for a special event application. So our current cancellation policy, the people would receive their money, except for the $50 application fee. Now we're looking at cancellations made at least 4 weeks prior to the scheduled event would have minus 20% processing fee. So that's what we're looking for, approval on that from you guys tonight.
Okay.
Any
Alicia?
questions? Yeah.
Questions in terms of, just to clarify, in terms of like the special event, are you talking picnic rentals? Are you talking, what?
Yeah, not just a shelter reservation.
Okay, so this
Shelter
would be like-
reservations don't require a special event application.
So-
They can just reserve a shelter.
Okay.
There's a cost associated, so.
So would this be like like a public, open to the public festival, or would this be like a private,
Yeah, we
like
do
wedding reception,
We do art
family
festivals.
reunion?
We do weddings. We do fun runs, all sorts of different special events.
And then in terms of the amount of staff time, when there is a cancellation to a rental, like how much staff time goes into that? Are you canceling the porta potties? Are you talking, talking to maintenance? Or, what is that? Because I know that's a lot of time to cancel.
Right. It's very hard to make that tangible of what, we don't have staff with stopwatches recording how much time they're spending on each item. What we were just looking to do is that time that is put in to be able to recover a portion of that. This most likely would not even completely cover our time.
I completely understand. And one last question going into porta potties, in terms of the contract, is that like United States Services or Honey Bucket? Okay. So with USS, is that like a 2-year contract or a 1-year contract? Like, are they able to commit to these fees for multiple years, or is that just
it's annually.
Yeah. Their fees have jumped a lot.
Yep.
Wow, I have that yet.
Do these also cover concerts in the park too? Is that a special event? I mean,
that is a special event, and there's fees associated with the porta potties
Are they the same as
provided.
these, or are these separate?
The fee would be the same.
Yeah, okay.
Can you explain to me, in my ignorance, what a deluxe restroom is versus a 180A?
Where you can sit down.
Yeah, space.
She's the
Space.
bigger one.
So the deluxe is $90 more than a ADA?
Yeah.
Okay.
Some events won't use standard or normal ADA because of the presentation of it. So if it's a more formal, wedding reception, they don't want that look of the blue porta potty. They want the more upscale.
Gotcha.
Okay, any other questions? Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the new fee schedule and cancellation policy?
I motion to approve.
Second.
Okay. Roll call?
Sean,
Aye.
Brent,
Aye.
Troy,
Aye.
Doug,
Aye.
Alicia,
Aye.
Derek,
Aye.
Jeff, Andy,
Aye.
and Karen.
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Okay. How much time do you think we might take on the Park Place equipment?
Totally up to you guys, but I would guess 10 minutes? 15 minutes?
Okay. Let's see, because I want to take a break in here somewhere. All right, so John, is that you, I assume also, the Park
Yep.
Place?
Yeah.
Do we have anyone here from Park Place?
Yep.
But are you on the steering committee?
What?
You're not on the steering committee. Oh, okay. All right, so you want to go ahead and introduce this?
Yeah, no problem. So we are in the process of replacing the playground at Park Place Park. We were approached by the neighborhood association. With our support, they successfully were able to receive a Metro Enhancement Grant in partnership with us. The Parks Department will be paying the other portion of the playground being replaced. So what we did was went and took a look at the site, and just because of the site constraints, there's only so much that we can do that would be not be cost prohibitive. So we took a look at the space that we had. We're working with Buell Recreation. We met on site, took measurements, and we came up with 2 options. And so
We did go on site. We talked to several citizens who were on site and with kids using the playground. Spoke with them, kind of see what they thought kids would like to see here on this park site. We also met with a small contingency of the Park Place neighborhood, the folks who helped to get the grants, and met with them, and they were supportive of our options that we have. And I will be going to the Park Place Steering Committee on Monday to get approval from the Neighborhood Association on the options that we have for the playground replacement. So just.
So I want to make note of the fact that we're going to be voting on this before the neighborhood votes on it. My personal opinion is this is the neighborhood's choice, but I think that it's appropriate for us to give input on if we have a preference between the two designs. And personally, I like the cheaper one, which is really funny. So, anybody want to comment on the designs?
It's a question. What's the thing to the extreme right?
That's a spinner.
Oh, okay.
You should try it, Doug.
My 7-year-old.
You sit down, I'll push you.
I actually had that question too.
I had experience on a children's playground as big as I am that I would not want to repeat. Thank you.
Yeah, so we tried to give, with the two options that we have, we tried to, make them diverse. So this one, instead of the spinner, has a climbing wall, and that was some of the feedback that we received from the parents there was how much the children just love to climb. And of course, you have to have the slides, but the feedback was that they really liked the climbing aspects, and then spinning was what the kids really enjoyed. So we try to have two of those different types, and yeah.
Is there anything about the material in this that would protect it from arson? Not going to totally stop it. The reason being the existing equipment, is out of age or has aged out, but it was burnt, and there was a climbing tube that went through that burnt very nicely. So we can't come quite up with a fireproof one totally.
No.
Okay, so Alicia?
I have a few questions. Sorry, today is my day of questions. I've been quiet for months. Couple questions. One, has the Parks and Recreation Department worked with Buell Recreation with the equipment before? And if so, in terms of a maintenance, long-term kind of wear and tear, has it, held up?
We have worked with Buell in the past, not on any of our most recent playground replacements. We actually met with Doug Buell, and he was letting, we discussed the quality of the play equipment, the durability. So I feel comfortable with us moving forward with them. They've been very supportive, very helpful. They're the ones who helped us, get the playground equipment that'll fit. Finding something that's going to fit in a space like this isn't the easiest. So they were really supportive.
Were there multiple bids that came in for this, or were they the one?
This is a state contract.
State contract, okay. And then second thing, in terms of, was there any consideration in terms of accessibility to ensure that it's accessible to the community?
Correct, yeah. So ADA compliancy will all be taken into consideration.
And then, and I guess a piece of that would be also in terms of what the surfacing is, because even if there's access to get onto the play structure, which right now I'm seeing a lot of stairs. From this view, I'm not seeing ramps, but then if that is taken into consideration, then it would be what the surface would be. If those are chips, then it wouldn't be accessible. So that would just be a comment for that. And then my third thing would just be if the area PTA has been consulted as well, because you know how parents are. They may not be involved in the neighborhood association, but trying to broaden that net. And I don't know if that's appropriate in terms of Park Place, because that's not my community, but
that's a very active neighborhood association. So if it were Oh, excuse me.
Thank you. And then I do. Okay, good.
Intervene.
Okay. A couple of questions. So when is the date for this tentatively to go in?
Right, so I'm here seeking your guys' approval to move forward to this. We were hoping to have the neighborhood association, but the meeting was canceled on Monday. So I will meet with them on Monday, and then our hope and our goal is to move forward with the city commission on February 5th to move forward with the purchase. There is a lead time, so once I get the approval from the commission, we'll put together a PSA and cut a PO to Buell for the purchase. As soon as that goes through, it's about 4 to 6 weeks lead time for them to build the playground. It'll then be shipped to us, and we will be scheduling the installation. And
okay, so maybe around this summer.
I think that's our goal, is to have kids playing
okay.
summer.
So one of the things I'm glad to see the climbing wall in this one. That was my first concern in the other slide. I'm 100% on board with, I'm glad that you talked with the parents and understand that the kids love to climb, they love to spin, they love to run around. Alicia, I love your comments about it being accessible to ADA standards and everything, and I'm not really seeing that in this picture. But one of the other things where I used to live in Portland was near Fernhill Park, and they actually had swings for kids in wheelchairs where they would be able to strap in, be able to swing. Is there any type of equipment that could be purchased, like an ADA swing, that would be included with this?
At this point in time, there is no swing, ADA swing included in this playground. We have them included in Tyrone S. Woods Memorial Park. We have them included in the DC Lotterette design. So, and just because, and I understand looking at a picture, it's hard to hard to understand that or embrace that. But yes, everything that we are doing will be to ADA compliancy.
Okay, and the last question is, summertime will be coming up. We get these really hot summer days. A lot of people that live up in there don't have air conditioning, especially in the low-income housing where this park would be, what some of the people might utilize it. I'm wondering if there is any idea or plan for a fountain system for the kids to go run through and cool down.
Not currently.
Okay.
First question, I have 3 statements, I think. Was there any restitution, or did they ever even catch the guy? I thought they did.
They caught him burning the playground at the place school. Okay. But there was no evidence that said that it was him that burned our playground.
Okay. And second, really maybe is just more of a comment. So, this playground is a replacement for an aged-out one, which means it's coming out of general maintenance funds, where oftentimes playgrounds are purchased out of SDC funds, and we typically have a lot more. So those go through a whole design structure. So this one, he's having to keep this within an existing footprint, and as soon as you touch that footprint, that's where this cost is going to go through the roof. My third comment is I have a 2nd grade daughter, and tonight I projected both of these up on our large screen TV prior to the meeting to do some scientific research. She had no knowledge of the cost of either piece of equipment, nor did she care, although she was surprised Daddy had a piece in the decision. And she absolutely loved the piece with the climbing wall, and specifically we went back and forth between the twisty thing and the climbing wall, and the climbing wall won out. So it would be easy for me to make a motion to support option B.
We'll record her vote too.
Yeah.
Doug?
I'll come to the simple fact that it looked like only one person at a time could do the spinning, and I know from my younger days when they were jungle gyms, they were heavily used, and it looks like this has the same opportunity for more use on that piece of equipment at a given period of time than the spinning thing would. From the standpoint of use, I would support that.
So if we were to make the choice tonight, or we choose to recommend to Park Place, who's in favor of one?
I would suggest making the motion that we would support it, the decision that the Park Place neighborhood's going to make, rather than make our own.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've got an
Number 1 is
indication
the
of what we
climbing
like.
wall, though, anyway. Number
No,
one
it's-
is the climbing wall?
No.
Number two.
Or number two is the climbing wall?
Yeah, so-
Yeah, okay, so John, you've heard the input?
I just want to, before we move through this, clarify, there will not be a ramp up onto this structure at all. There will be a ramp into the playground itself. We have to make that modification, and wood chips, if engineered wood chips are used, they are deemed ADA acceptable. So, and they will be.
Well, and it is a constrained space.
Yeah, actually, the design that we've managed to make work in this space gave us leeway of 1 foot. So, it's
Yeah.
One quick question. Isn't this park have somebody that oversees it?
yes, we have park hosts on site.
Okay.
Okay, got your input. I think, you want more?
Motion would be nice.
Not a motion? Okay.
I move that we support whatever the Park Place Neighborhood Association supports.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Sean,
Aye.
Derek,
Aye.
Brent,
Aye.
Jeff, Andy,
Aye.
Doug,
Hi,
Troy,
Aye.
Alicia.
you're having fun.
Aye.
Just trying to throw a
You make roll call so much more interesting. And I would say that it sounds like they were all leaning toward B's, so.
Well, for the record, though, if Doug would agree to get on the spinny thing, then I would want that one.
Thank you.
That is a formal motion.
Okay, so let's take a 10-minute break, be back at 8:30. Christy and I am just having fun making you wait, but. All right, we are reconvened. And we have Christina Robertson Gardner with us for the Beaver Creek Concept Plan.
Thank you, Chair Maury. I'll wait till this comes up. So my name is Christina Robertson Gardner. I'm a senior planner with Oregon City, and this is the third time, kind of this summer, fall, now winter, to come back. So some of you, this is new. Some of this have seen me 3 times now. I'll do a little bit of intro and then really get down to what I'm asking this evening for direction from the PRAC. So the Beaver Creek Road Concept Plan was adopted in 2008. It's one of 3 concept plans in the city. And it's the last one really to move forward with zoning and code amendments. So it's, and I don't have a map on my slide, but it is really the east side of the southeast part of the city, on the east side of the high school and the college, on the east side of Beaver Creek Road, really encompassing the airfield and the golf course and some area north of Loader Road. The concept plan area is a combination of kind of residential to the south of Loader Road with some commercial area and some employment, and more employment areas to the north. So we're looking at about 1,000 dwelling units at full build out and about 500,000 square feet of employment space. So that's kind of where we're working on. As part of the code amendments, because Oregon state law requires clear and objective development requirements when housing comes in, and because housing is a big component of this, we need to look at a path. If an applicant wants to do a master plan and negotiate with Parks Department and come up with a plan, that's always available through the Planning Commission. We call a more subjective process. But if they don't, we have to provide a clear and objective path. And what that means is we have to provide a way to acquire the identified space as part of a subdivision or site plan design review, because that if we don't, we won't get the park space that we've identified in the plan. And so we don't really have this type of code in Oregon City yet. We usually, the Parks Department works with PRAC, identify properties to buy, and then you acquire them, and then over time you do a master plan and you build the park. And so in this situation, the code is looking at acquiring the land proportional to the development at hand. And then once the city has the land in acquisition, it stays in the normal place, which is the Parks Department works with the Parks and Recs Advisory Committee to create a master plan to build the park. So this is not a code to build the parks. It's just a code to acquire the land identified in the master plan. So we don't get in a place where suddenly 1,000 dwelling units are built and we have no parks, because we couldn't deny an application. So I've been working with the Planning Commission over the summer and fall to look at the different code amendments that are needed to rezone properties, because right now a lot of the properties don't have a city zone, as well as just the amendments to the city code that need to implement it. And the Parks Acquisition Code was identified early on. And this summer we had some initial recommendations, and we had some kind of to be determined requirements that over the fall, I was working with the previous Community Service Director, Phil Lewis, and then now trying to coordinate, come back to you and see if you think we're moving in the right direction or you have additional comments. So this package will go back to the Planning Commission. They'll make their recommendation, and then we'll have hearings at the City Commission. So we're looking at a Planning Commission recommendation of the full zoning package in February, a work session with the City Commission at their March work session, and then public hearings on about March and April. And then soon after that, it would be adopted, and properties within the city limits would have a new city zone attached to them. And then private development, of course, would happen as the market decides, which could be the next day or 5 to 10 years from now, depending on what the market wants. So there's going to be 4 items I'd like to go through with very short, 4 to 5 slide PowerPoint presentation. But there are 2 major parks in the Park Place concept plan. And really what we were looking at is a concept plan, which is like a narrative document. Now you gotta turn that into actual code. And so there's this translation process that goes from fluffy language to clear and objective standards, which we've been working on in the planning department. And so if you're trying to find clear and objective standards, you need to put metrics to them. So we've been trying to create metrics out of more aspirational language. The plan had a linear park, so you can see that on the left with the blue arrow in the kind of green linear park. And over conversations, over time, we realized the best way to implement that is a pearl and string approach, which means proportionally as subdivisions come in, you look at 3 to 4 pearls of a park, which are all connected with a shared youth pedestrian bike path. It's about 30 foot wide. And so you could have a big subdivision come in, you can get multiple pearls, or you could get them over time. But as the street gets built out, you'll always have that shared use path that'll be able to connect it. It'll all be considered one park. We want to plan is you take the lawnmower out, you can use the shared youth path so you don't have to take it out, mow, come back to the next pearl. It's all kind of maintained as one park. So you have to create metrics for what those pearls are. We have some direction from the concept plan, and then there's some places where they were silent, so we have to fill in the blanks. The 30-foot pedestrian bikeway was kind of alluded to, and so that has been identified really as part of a street section. So the string part, we're looking more of as a street gets built out, so it's not necessarily part of the parks acquisition code. We're looking at 3 to 4 pearls, all within that kind of green area to the left, and then this is our new map on the right, so translates to the lavender area. On the east side of the parkway, or what we're trying to maybe calling the Thimble Creek Parkway, looking at a minimum and maximum. So what's too small of a pearl? What's too big of a pearl? If we know 10 acres is about what we want for the size of the pearls, but we want that flexibility because we don't know what the size of the subdivisions that come in. We kind of have a 2-acre minimum, a 5-acre maximum. So that's something we just kind of had to use reasonableness in our recommendation. We're looking at a maximum of the 10 acres, so it's not including the string of the shared use path. You have to come up with some minimum average width because we don't want to be trying to acquire land for a park and the developer wants to give us a 20-foot deep, 1,000-foot long pearl. So we have to come up with some. So we put 200 feet for the minimum average width and depth of a pearl as just a starting point that we thought was a reasonable approach. But I definitely want to hear if there's a different approach from PRAC. And then this came up previously, and it's not in the plan, but I think what I've heard from the Parks and Rec Advisory Commission that this is really important is at least 5 areas be developed with active recreation components. So it's not all a passive recreation. That being said, this is really just acquisition, but we don't want to acquire land that couldn't become an active recreation pearl, for example, like something that was too steep. I'm going to go through the elements, and then you can come back and ask me questions. The second park is called the Thimble Creek Conservation Area, and that's really the hillside leading down on the east edge to Thimble Creek. And the way the code is written, the way the plan writes is if you take the stream, so the one on the plan, the map on the right is a better way to think about it. If you see the stream in green, in blue, you'll see the Natural Resource Overlay District, which is that stream buffer, is in green. And about where you see the end of the hash mark, that's our geologic hazard area, and about the street is about the 490-foot elevation. So picture that blue street is about at 490 feet. So the area between the street and the edge of the green buffer is identified as the park area, but the plan calls for half of that area. The plan calls for half of the area between the stream buffer and the 490-foot elevation is the park, which is about a 7-acre space. It also says that there should be 2 public viewpoints. So we also had staff recommended some metric to separate them so you don't have a viewpoint that's 10 feet from each other. So we said 400 feet. There should be a 700-foot non-interrupted view corridor. So there isn't homes on the 700 feet of that longer, probably 1,500 linear feet. We don't know quite where that would be, so we'd work with a future developer and they'd try to figure out what lots made the most sense for houses and what ones made the most sense for the view. But we would want a 700-foot non-interrupted view, a forest trail, and then there was some question in the beginning of the concept plan analysis as we went to the code amendments if this was going to be a public park or if it was just kind of a private easement area. And we heard loud and clear from both the public and community services and Parks and Rec last summer that they wanted this to be a public park, public open space. So we have written that into our parks acquisition language. So these are kind of the metrics where we want to put in the code. So as subdivisions come in, once again, we can acquire. We don't quite know if it's going to be the top half, the bottom half, the middle part of that rectangle, but once again, it's that conversation. If the developer wants to provide over and above the minimum through a negotiation, then all of it becomes open space. That's above and beyond. So we are trying to do a direct translation of the adopted plan as the minimum requirements. The two other things that were part of the plan, and this was attached in your packet, was an understanding that everyone in the concept plan area has some responsibility towards putting in money because they will be using aspects of the park. And so there was a request from the Planning Commission to understand how any non-residential or employment uses that may buffer the north end of the park may provide some financial support, though definitely not to the point where they're building it, or to the level of what a residential development would put in. So there was a recommendation of $1,000 per 5,000 square feet of new commercial space. So for example, a 35,000 square industrial development would provide $7,000. So we're looking at, 500,000 square feet would be the total anticipated development that we would have in that area. We don't know, it might be more, it might be less, but that's generally what we're looking at our projections. The original residential calculation that was presented this summer through our consultant work, as we did the math, we were realizing that their calculator factor was a bit off, and we did not feel it was proportional. So they originally had the calculation as 2.6 persons per dwelling unit times the total number of dwelling units proposed in the development times they had 8 acres times 1,000 people. So for example, previously, if you had a 350 unit subdivision out of the 1,000, you were probably going to be dedicating as your one application more like 8 acres of the 10. So we felt that that was not quite proportional. So we saw a factor of 4 to be more proportional as development comes in. Because what we don't want to be is writing code that could put us in a legal challenge. We want to make sure our code is clear, objective, and proportional and legal. That being said, if you look at the 7 acres of the conservation area and the 10 acres of the linear space, you have about 17 acres total in the concept plan area of new park space. Some of it's, of course, open space and hillside and not as usable. So a combination you have, but the easement area, because it's all hillside and it's not as valuable and it's not, the risk of proportionality and legal is less. If the development that comes in, where that tax lot is involved, they will just dedicate that as part of their subdivision. So that's a little bit more straightforward than a proportional analysis of the very flat developable area. So where are we right now? We are looking for further directions on what we propose, and if we're missing something, we want to hear what are the goals of the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee. Does the adopted concept plan conflict? I don't think we want to pile on a lot of additional asks because we're trying to just translate, but if there's something that's conflicting, I think the Planning Commission, City Commission wants to know, or if there's something you do want to add that you think is important enough to put in our code, I think the Planning Commission and City Commission wants to know that. When I last spoke with the Planning Commission, I let them know I'd be coming this evening, and I would forward all your comments, be them formal or informal, back to them when they meet at the February 10th meeting. So the next time I'll come back to the Planning Commission. So I'm available for any questions or comments or direction. I can go back to any slide you need.
John?
I just have a question for clarification. Probably the first slide.
Sure.
It dealt with the pearls.
Yeah.
Since that's a new concept for me, my understanding is basically the intent is to have a 10-acre park, but basically it could occur in 2 or 3 or 4 phases as developers go in? Okay. So my only concern was the minimum 2-acre, 5-acre maximum, that our minimum requirement for a park is 3 acres, I believe. So if it is that first park, maybe if there's some way to add the language that the first Pearl must be no less than 3, so at least it meets the minimum goal of the park plan.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay.
I just need to clarify, I'm kind of new to the area. Thimble Creek is, I had to Google it. Is this correct that it's out between Fred Meyer and Redland?
Thimble Creek runs kind of parallel to Beaver Creek Road and then empties into Abernathy Creek, just about north of Loader Road.
This is the high school.
Yeah, so the high school, I know you can't see mine, but yeah, Sean can show you it. Really, the area east of the college, east of the Beaver Creek and east of the high school is what we're talking about. It's kind of the flatter area, and then it kind of quickly heads off to some...
Thank you for clarifying, because I was trying to imagine where this development was going to go.
Behind the golf course.
Yeah, and the golf course
out there.
The golf course is the urban growth boundary, so that is the southern end of the
Other side of
concept plan area.
the high school.
The Thimble Creek piece that you put there, and then looking over at your, over on your right-hand side map, that's what's in our urban growth boundary? Is that what, is that?
The urban, yeah, so Thimble Creek, the part of Thimble Creek in the urban growth boundary is this little section right here. Everything, when it's outside to the south and to the north, it's not in. But that small section, Thimble Creek, kind of skirts into the urban growth boundary.
And you pull that out because that will be one of the pearls?
No, this is the, I'll go to the next slide. The Thimble Creek Conservation Area is really a hillside open space with, 2 views and then probably a little path.
Okay.
Derek?
I haven't been out, I haven't taken a look at the Thimble Creek Conservation Area. 490 feet's pretty big. How much flat area is there and how much is it? You said it's sloped?
Yeah, at about 490 feet is where the slope begins down. So kind of 490 elevation is where most of the golf course is. And then at about 490 on the east side is about where that east road is. Then it starts to kind of precipitously fall into a hill.
So it's not a 490-foot drop?
No, that's the 490. But it does get quite low. But I don't know if I don't know the elevation of the bottom of the ravine. But
I misunderstood.
It's definitely a couple hundred. I mean, it's a steep. It may go down 100 to 100.
I was just wondering how much was flat, but you're saying it's 490 foot.
Everything you see in the crosshatch is basically a hillside.
I've navigated it in a golf cart. It's not precipitous, and it does have some leveling places, so it would be walkable. It's not totally you're going to fall off the cliff.
No, you're right, but you're not building homes on it.
No, definitely not. Jeff?
How did you arrive at the average width and depth of 200 feet?
We had to start with something because we had TBD for so many months, and having that conversation with Phil Lewis, that seemed like a reasonable approach. And that's actually probably the one I want to talk the most to Prac about, because we have to put something. And we need to put something that removes ridiculous proposals, but we also don't want to constrain ourselves to creative approaches. Right. And that's also minimum average. So you could still have a wedge, and then the wedge is, helps with the average.
Okay, and then also, do we really need to specify a maximum, 5 acres maximum?
No, we don't.
Could we just
the
leave that
question is,
open?
if it's a pearl, I guess you could have a whole 10-acre park if you really wanted to.
I mean, if a developer wanted to create a 7-acre park or an 8-acre park in the Pearl, I'd hate to say no to that.
Well, and because this is, the Pearl and String was a way to be creative in acquisition, this is where we definitely want some direction from the Parks and Rec, because we're trying our best to implement without going against, a vision. But when the vision is vague, we want to fill it in. So if that's something that Parks and Rec want to hear, which is, if you want to do the whole 10 acres all in the middle of, the lavender area, then that's, or, the longer the park is kind of stretched out, you also have the longer of the shared use path. I don't know, we haven't really thought about what happens if on the other side of the north, if the park's all kind of constrained, do we have the shared use path on its own?
Well, I know you mentioned having the pearls connected in the sense that there's maintenance acquisition to each, but as you stretch out over a longer footprint, it becomes a little problematic with maintenance because you've got to move mowers and other equipment and things of that nature. So, but I like the idea of a string of pearls. It kind of reminds me of the Boston area where they're emerald necklace that goes around the city, which is really quite a nice park concept. So I think in concept, it's really a good idea.
And I like the 3 to 4 pearls, and I'm horrible at distance, but 200 feet by 200 feet would provide for play equipment in one and room for a soccer field in one.
Think about a normal lot in McLaughlin is 50 by 100. So you're kind of looking at a back-to-back lot as your minimum.
So if you're saying active recreation, though, are we really looking at baseball fields, soccer fields, things like that?
Well, 200 foot by 200 foot, you're not going to get your minimum. So this would be is the pearl, it doesn't have to be round. I mean, a pearl may be a rectangle and then a square. And then, so we don't know exactly the best dimensions because we still have to put in local streets. And so we're trying to, we just don't want to be acquiring skinny areas and slivers.
Okay.
And I also love the non-residential fee. Thank you to the Planning Commission for coming up with that.
And just to give a visual example, if folks are familiar with downtown Portland, they refer to the South Park blocks and the North Park blocks as the string of pearls, and Director Park is the diamond in the middle. So if you think of all the parks and all the different types of concepts and sizes that there are in that string, it kind of gives an idea in a smaller way, what this could be like.
Another way of thinking of, I thought in the Pearl District, each park had a different identity, but they're all kind of connected. So Jameson has its own purpose. The Fields has that's the newest one, and then I'm totally blanking the Natural Park.
My colleague created that. I can't think of it. I know exactly what you're saying.
Thursday, right? Tanner Spring Park, right? That's the very passive one where you're learning about stormwater and you're sitting in the natural space. So, once again, that level of detail does not have to be in this acquisition code, but it's something to think about as we move forward as a city and identifying what kind of things we want in the pearls. And how master planning of those go. But that is it's an approach that City of Portland took, as each park kind of had a specific purpose. We don't have to do that, but we want to make sure we don't have too much information that we're bound to because it's code. We don't want to have don't want to be vague enough that we don't have clear direction of when we try to acquire land. So we're trying to find that balance because once it's codified, it's really hard to change.
Okay, Derek, you.
Since living over there, I would like to say that I would like to leave it open where we could acquire a larger area. Like Sean was saying, we have very few actual parks. Even I know Tyrone Woods is coming in, but you talk about ball fields. There's nothing other than the high school and the college. But if we get a large residential group over there.
I mean, we use Wesley Lynn's got ball fields that are used. I mean, some of our parks are used for ball fields.
Chapin. Oh, I know all about it, but they're not near us.
I think.
I see where you're going.
I'm over there. Yeah.
Okay.
So
yes, you're right.
I mean, up to 4 pearls, and there's a minimum size, but we're not having the minimum number of pearls and the maximum number of size. So change this so we, if it was one pearl of 10 acres, that would be okay.
I think I'm just agreeing with Jeff on his comment about the maximum.
Doug?
I assume that these pearls will have street access to, depending on their use, street access as well.
Yeah, they're going to be on the east side of the main collector road, which is this middle blue road, which we're trying to talk about names because people have trouble with unnamed Street A. Because we're actually also thinking about renaming the Beaver Creek Road concept plan because it's confusing to people, because Beaver Creek is a community outside of Oregon City. Right now the Planning Commission is supportive of Thimble Creek concept plan because Thimble Creek is right here and it's a geographical and it's not a very long creek and it goes pretty soon into Abernathy Creek. So we're thinking of this main internal road as being some type of Thimble Creek name. So yeah, the park would be on the east side of this main collector road.
Okay, so the staff report is requesting either a motion to approve as presented or a motion to approve with specific changes. Does anybody have any specific change to this recommendation?
Do you need?
Well, I'm kind of hearing this concept of the larger park and then so the size, this number one, and then I kind of heard make sure the first park is at least 3 acres.
Well, make sure it meets the park master plan.
Yeah.
Which
so those
is 3 or
are all
3.5.
things that we can write into those language. If those are the 3 things I'm hearing.
So would somebody like to make a motion to that effect?
I think her hand was still up.
Oh, I just had a random question in terms of the Thimble Creek area, in terms of the 2 viewpoints. Would those
They're kind of like
be acceptable, either viewpoints only reached by foot or viewpoints by foot and, by car? So
that's a good question. Let's go back to what we have written, because if this is asking me this spring, I'll be like, what's in the code? And really, we are bound by what is in the code. So if it's silent and we're all supportive, it can happen. So what we say is 2 public viewpoints separated by at least 400 feet with a minimum size of 0.35 acre at less than 10% slope per viewpoint. So we don't say how you get there and can the viewpoint be lower down.
I think it would be great to have at least one of those viewpoints that could be viewed by car, because not everybody has the same mobility and accessibility. But to have that ability to experience Thimble Creek and to see that view you wouldn't normally, I think to have them both pedestrian, not to to not quantify it, could miss an opportunity.
Do you use it's saying at least? I think we're assuming they probably would both be ADA accessible, though it's not said.
But there's ADA accessible with wheelchair, but there's some folks who literally just want to pull up in a car, like a 2-car viewpoint and be able to see, I don't know. Just maybe that's just my weird tangent, but.
Where's the viewpoint is to the actual Thimble Creek place?
In the areas, the views out.
I guess it depends on how it's done, but the fact is that it's really steep sloped, and you'd have to fit it in very carefully in order to do that.
Well, the reason we wrote this language, so this interesting, the converse, is we wrote it because we didn't want to have a viewpoint that was basically 60 square feet and a precipitous cliff. And so we were trying to find what a reasonable viewpoint space would be, because we're thinking the other way of negotiating land acquisition. But if it's important, based on, PRAC's goals about something about that viewpoint, once again, we can add some clarifiers, but when the plan is vague, but I don't want to bring things in that weren't part of the public process of the plan, if that makes sense.
A quick question. The viewpoints you're recommending would be contained within the 7-acre site?
Correct. It would be contained within the 7-acre.
The concern we had was whether it would be in conflict with the existing master plan. But if it's within the 7-acre site, I believe it would be.
And the 0.35, once again, is also a guess. That's why we underlined it, because we're trying to find a way to make sure that our viewpoints were not underwhelming and not being able to be utilized. So if there's recommendations of any of those metrics, I think we're open, but as always, you have to, when something says TBD for so long, you gotta put numbers in it to have people start that conversation.
And I think also from a maintenance perspective, along with just a user perspective, it's nice to have vehicular access to the busiest parts of the facility. So if it's a 7-acre site, if we're gonna have 2 viewpoints in it, the closer we can get our equipment to those sites, the easier it is for us to maintain.
The North Road, though, pretty much runs along where those viewpoints would be planned.
They could be, but I think there could be a version, if it's mutually supported by everyone, that there is, one upper and one slightly lower, but that's really we want to make sure that there, as Chair Morey said, there's different topography in this, even though it is very hillside. We don't want, of course, to get the area that has the 7 acres with the least amount of ability to, enjoy it as a community. So we're trying to put metrics to help that negotiation, so we're not stuck with the least, usable space.
So could we add a recommendation that at least one viewpoint be at the 450-foot level?
Yeah.
Yeah, good idea.
Seem to have nods to that.
Yeah, I can add that in.
Okay, so with the changes that we've made, so the 3 acres,
Whatever the master plan minimum is just the key.
The first one should be a 3-acre. First one in should be at least a 3-acre.
Or whatever the master plan
whatever the master plan is.
Okay.
That's our Bible.
and that,
And then eliminate the maximum.
And have up to 4 pearls.
Yeah, up to 4, yeah.
Yeah.
okay, and the 450-foot level, anything else specific?
I was curious what Alicia thought really quickly on the 200 by 200.
You go back.
I'm having a hard time visualizing that. If I'm super visual and I can't picture what 200 by 200.
I just kept thinking football field is 300 roughly.
Think
So
70 by 70 yards. As 2 separate ones, because a 200 by 200 foot is not very big. So it's probably like an acre. So what we're saying is, do you want, if your rectangle is small abutting the street, but it goes long, that's okay, because you have a smaller width, but a longer depth to get you your pearl, because it's a rectangle, not a pearl of a circle. Or maybe your rectangle is kind of horizontal against the road, and so it has a long width, but a shorter depth.
Yeah, it's not 200 by 200, it's 200 by length or 200 by width.
In my mind, that's such a maintenance, question in a way, because and as well as a safety question in terms of if you're looking for active recreation, and depending on the shape of where that is, if it's parallel to what the road is and you're trying to put a playground right there, that's a safety issue. But yeah, so I don't know, I would maybe, Dawn or Denise could speak in terms of if maintenance has thoughts on that, because I think
the concern we would have would be just that if we're trying to wedge in a playground, for instance, between a street and a 200-foot boundary, it's just, it's not the easiest thing to do, and allow for that overrun space to catch your toddler before they go into the road.
Right.
So to speak. But I think the key is to consider it as the minimum average. So logically, you could make the assumption as well, okay, well, there's going to be some areas that are narrower than that, and conversely, there'll be areas wider than that. So it's kind of setting up for some challenging park design, but at the same time, it truly is the minimum standard.
And it could be more benches or, different
right.
type of
In those cases, if you did have one that was simply, it's the minimum is going to be 2 acres. In size, and it has to meet that basic dimension, then it's going to be a much more passive space. For us to look at it, that's pretty much a micro park or a vest pocket park, right? Which is a maintenance issue. But when you look at it in its entirety, the string, if you will, between the pearls, then it becomes just an odd-shaped park. It meets the maximum, or meets the minimum.
I just have a quick question. Again, I'm sorry, being new, I'm not knowing
Those
this.
are the best questions. Come in.
Well, I'm thinking what, Alicia, you just mentioned, like putting in a playground, then I've heard like benches. Is there any type of recommendation or guidelines as to what goes into a park when it's new? Does it have to have a playground? Does it have to have benches? Does it have to be green space for walking in?
And so
What
this is,
it?
I think this is where you have the baton.
Okay.
So this concept plan is a 20,000 foot, planning document that's looking at different colors on a map. And this code is trying to make sure we acquire the right size. And then really the baton gets turned over to Dawn.
Okay.
And then the community then works on the master plan for those. And so what I'm looking at is I'm trying to translate a narrative document into code. And I want to, if there's any specifics, I want to carry those to code. But when there's silence and it's needed, you got to come up with some metrics. And so those are some of those areas that we've underlined, which is, I know if we don't write that, I might be here a year from now arguing with someone that a 20-foot deep park is okay because it's, 3 acres. And like, if we're silent, we can't say no, So I'm looking at worst case scenarios in my planner brain. I'm not necessarily planning the park, but I don't manage parks or understand those questions. So that 200 feet may have a different metric based on a better understanding of what would be, we wouldn't want 200, we want 250 for this reason. Well, that makes sense. But if we're all kind of just guessing, it'd be good to know what people's thoughts are behind their guess of how small is too small of an average.
And it kind of comes back to what you were talking about earlier, Sean, about are we able to put in like a soccer field, and a football field is 300 feet by 300 feet. I would think that we would want to consider the families or with the population that's moving in there, if they have kids or, what they will need for recreational purposes.
But that's all part of the master planning process, not part of this.
So the purpose of what you're trying to do is simply to modify the code to allow for flexibility and possibilities.
Yeah.
Then the next phase is to get into all the details.
So I want
we're
to
asking about. Yeah.
community tract A in a subdivision that says future park. And that tract A is part of this Pearl and String, and then over time we can say we get a plan our tract A, B, and C.
Okay,
But those tracks may come in over a longer time period.
So with the clarification that 200 by 200 is clearly a minimum, is there a motion to approve what was presented tonight with the modifications that have been made?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll?
Alicia.
Oh, yes, aye.
Beth.
Aye.
Troy.
Yes.
Brent.
Aye.
Sean.
Aye.
Derek.
Aye. Oh, Derek, that's you. That's you, that's not me.
Aye.
Jeff.
Aye.
Saving the
Andy.
rest for last.
And Karen.
Aye.
Thank you very, very much. And if, as we move forward through the Planning Commission meeting and also at the City Commission work session, their hearings, I know they're going to be really interested to hear, and I'll pass on. But we do invite the PRAC to be involved as this goes through the City Commission hearings process. If this, you want to be more involved.
I just wanted to comment, if I might. I'm so pleased to see this is happening. I mean, we try to fit in pedestrian walkways into cities, neighborhoods that are already built. It's been a challenge. We had, of course, the where's my head? The middle school that came through in terms of the planning and getting that pedestrian path through that area, because they were rebuilding that school, so we had the opportunity to do that. But we have to piecemeal so many things together, and having this great opportunity in an area that hasn't been built out yet to have something that really works.
One quick more thing. The Planning Commission is also looking at make sure that we have best practices for bike lanes, because the 2006 plan definitely had undersized bike lanes. So the survey will be coming out soon about that. And the Planning Commission really wants to pursue the ability to sign this area as 20-mile-an-hour residential streets. We're now able as a community to do that. They want this area to be in the new test case, which I think everyone's so far in the Planning Division and Planning Commission is really excited to use this concept plan area to show what 20-mile-per-hour residential community could look like.
So when was the first meeting we had on the Beaver Creek concept plan?
I mean, for the planning, probably 2005, 2006.
Yeah. I knew I'd been going to meetings for a long time. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, and the final new business item is the I-205 corridor widening update. Easy for me to say.
Yes, it is. With us this evening is Brian Bauman. Brian works with HDR. It's an engineering firm that is working with the state. The state is moving forward with its planning for the widening and structural improvements of the Abernathy Bridge at I-205. And I believe we have a PowerPoint that was presented or put together by Brian and his associates. Did you want to come forward and?
Yeah, although, well, let's introduce them. I brought friends.
Well, that's good. We need at least two of you at microphones who are going to be speaking.
Okay. This is where John Storm Park is.
All right, members of the commission, thank you for having us this evening, or the committee, excuse me. I'm Kimberly Dinwiddie. I'm with the Oregon Department of Transportation, and we're here tonight to seek your comments on our plans for the John Storm Park as we move forward with the I-205 widening and seismic upgrade project. So my colleagues are working for our consultant design team. We have Brian Bauman from HDR and Karen Tatum from Quincy Engineering, and they will be able to share with you our plans for moving forward, and we're happy to answer any questions.
All right. By we, I assume you mean me, huh? Yeah, thanks for having us. The project team was here. It's been a while. And I'm not sure, because I wasn't at the meeting at that time, who all was engaged in that conversation. So given that I know it's 9:12 and I heard lots of people have children, I know it's getting close to bedtime, I'm going to move through the first part kind of quickly. And if I'm moving too quickly or if you have questions, please feel free to stop me. I tend to talk kind of quick sometimes. Let's see, I'm just going to press random buttons and see what happens. Nothing. Oh, there we go. Just a quick overview. The I-205 corridor widening is trying to address several issues within the corridor. Primarily the bottleneck that creates some of the traffic jams that some of you may experience at some or all parts of all days. And also the closely spaced ramps that creates some travel issues, specifically some weaving and some safety concerns within the corridor. And bless you.
Thanks.
And also this I-205 is identified as the lifeline route after the large Cascadia Zone earthquake event happens. So the third project issue that is looking to be solved is to seismically harden or to make sure that 205 is a route that can be used by yourselves, your loved ones, and emergency responders after the earthquake occurs. So doing so is no small feat, and the portion of the project that I think is of particular interest to the Oregon City Parks Committee, although maybe lots of it is of interest, I'm happy to speak about whatever you like, but is how the Abernathy Bridge is going to be brought up to the seismic standard. And it will be done so by essentially doing what is called outrigger bents. That's our fancy engineering term. Effectively, it means we're going to build new bents in the water outside of the existing. So if you look at the image, the shadowed effect, saying the existing bents are what is there today. The new bridge supports after, which is the non-transparent items, are what is going to be proposed to be built. The existing supports then get removed.
Then there's really kind of cool engineering that goes into it. Actually, the bridge slides apart. You may not be aware, but the Abernathy Bridge, a superstructure, is actually 2 bridges. So then we're going to slide them apart, and then we're going to build the widening on top of it. But the foundation improvements are required in order to meet the seismic retrofits and account for the loads. Is that right? Yep. Karen's the engineer. I'm not the engineer.
This is cool.
Oh, and there's lots of cool. I mean, I know we've given more in-depth presentations before. I tried to keep it short, being respectful. I know we're a late addition to the agenda, and so, but happy to come back and have smarter people talk about it. Oh, did we miss a slide? Oh, no, we didn't miss a slide. So, and to be able to build these new shafts and do the seismic upgrades, there is a proposed use of both John Storm Park and the Sportscraft Boat Park ramp. Back in, and this was acknowledged early in the project. This image here is from some of the materials that were put out during the November 2018 ballot measure. That was a success. So I'm sure, as you all are aware, in order to use parks for things other than parks, it requires voter approval. We became aware of that as well, and so we had something on, and this is both in Westland and Oregon City, on a ballot measure in November 2018, which got approved for the use. Within that ballot measure, one of the things that the Oregon Department of Transportation said that was going to happen with the project was to try to figure out a way to provide additional parking. Within that area, we heard very loud and clear from yourselves as well as the community that certain times of year parking is a large problem in there. It's a very high use area, and specifically during the Chinook runs in the summer season. So we're trying to figure out where can we put parking. We evaluated several alternatives, I think 4 alternatives in this general area to try to accommodate parking that would also incorporate trailer use. And those areas made use of the open area that is where proposed new parking, where it actually says that is. Unfortunately, as we were laying out the various designs, we ran into substantial issues, mostly grade issues, as a result of trying to save the Abernathy Elm and the placard area that is a dedication and a landmark there. So as that was a design constraint, it drove very large grades, not only getting in and out of the parking lot, but also in the parking lot itself, that seemed to be unacceptable, at least for normal use. So after running through several iterations of that, the team finally acknowledged that we couldn't get something with a flat enough grade. I believe it was below 8% within the parking lot. In order to make it a usable space. And so we moved away and migrated away from that and landed on what is being asked for your input today. And that is the red box area that says proposed new parking. Currently, the curb line just extends through there, and what we're proposing to do is to bring a sidewalk through there, have off-street parking there with the planter strip that meets the Planning Commission's requirements, and then a new bike ped crossing into the main portion of the park facility. And that's the short and sweet.
I'm just kind of curious, is this additional parking going to be produced earlier and used during the construction as well?
So I think what we're, do you want to take it?
I can take that.
Okay.
Karen Tapman, so I work with Quincy Engineering. I'm part of the HDR team, and I'm the project manager for this one segment of a very much larger project. So before the contractor can occupy John Storm Park, we are going to mandate that they put the other parking in. So it's not going to completely alleviate, it's not enough parking to offset the existing parking for John Storm Park, but it's something. And yes, we can require the contractor to do that first.
So, I'm sorry, Doug,
No.
okay. In that aerial photo, it showed I see a car there, and looking, how many trucks and trailers do you think can fit in that strip?
So I'm not sure what a standard truck and trailer is, but a standard vehicle space is about 20 feet. And the existing parking that's on the park side fits about 5 cars.
Okay.
And so the other side, so it's about 100 feet, and what we're gonna provide is about 130 feet. So since it's not striped, since you don't get the T stripes, what we're hoping is that a vehicle with a truck with a small trailer would be able to fit in there. And I honestly don't design parking lots, so I don't do development, I do big bridges and highways and interchanges.
Yeah, and that's one of my questions is like during the Chinook runs and when it's really busy, how many additional cars, has any study been done on how many cars are down there, how many parking spaces there are? Karen?
Every available place you can find.
So how many spots are we taking out with this with the seismic reconstruction?
Actually,
Ultimately, we're not taking out any.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we're adding this
Okay.
additional parking. We're temporarily occupying
Okay.
the parking lot.
And it's very
during
important to know that
construction.
John Storm Park parking lot was very specifically designed not to accommodate trailer parking. And so you're not eliminating any boat trailer parking during its high use time.
Okay.
So really, there's just a problem. Theoretically, from a fishing standpoint only, there's a net gain.
Okay.
From day one. If-
How many car parking spots do we have there in Johnston right now?
I'm thinking 30.
Is there 30?
Oh,
and that'll
just ballpark.
And all of that will be used during construction, right? The whole parking lot.
Yes. The
So
contractor
we're
needs
essentially
to
taking away 30
entire parking.
car spots and giving 6.
So to
If we're looking at 130 feet, your calculation is 20 feet per car. Is that what I'm understanding you to say?
Standard parking space on
20
the
feet
street
seems like a
is about
lot.
20-foot length.
That's, I mean,
Troy?
I've got an SUV and it doesn't take 20
Let her
feet to park
answer.
that thing.
Well, and
That's a standard parking.
I mean, no, I
You have to
appreciate
think
that,
about
but I'm
the
just saying,
you have to think about the backing up and pulling out and.
Of course, I live in
like me trying to
McLaughlin and they
parallel park.
squeeze cars in
Give me
here
30.
in front of my house. They're
Let me
squeezing
give an
it in.
example. So we had a 27-foot travel trailer with my truck and my past truck, and I was 54 feet.
Really? With the trailer?
With the trailer. So if you're in a full-size, typical heavy-duty, 3/4 1-ton, 4-door with a jet sled behind it that's 25 feet, you're roughly pushing 50 feet or so.
Right, but I guess what I'm trying to do is just I guess to add some context is during construction only. Because at the end, clearly there's a net gain, no question, because you're not taking away the spots once we're done. You're not going to uproot, right? So you're taking away 30 for the duration of the construction. And I can appreciate your 20 foot per car, but I've got an SUV, which I think is a good average between a large pickup truck and a small car. It's not 20 feet. And so I think your 20 feet number is a good conservative number. At 130 feet, I would argue you can probably get about 8 cars in there, not 6, maybe 8 or 9. And so I think to add some perspective, I think we're probably giving up 30 and maybe getting 9 or 10 during construction.
But it's temporary.
Yeah, oh, absolutely temporary. Yeah, I think it's a fair temporary number that, we're losing some, but it's construction, it's what happens.
So any other questions?
One quick question. What's the seismic grade what will it be able to withstand? What type of earthquake?
So that's a very difficult question, and as an engineer, I can't give you an answer. What I can give you is some criteria that we're attempting to design to. Nobody knows how big the earthquake is, but it's about a 9.5.
Okay. That's what I've heard. That's what I was hoping that if we want I-205 to be usable.
But we can't tell you what it will withstand.
We're not
That's sort of
worried about
reverse calculations. Yes, if that one happens, you're gonna have plenty of other things to worry about.
What's the impact, the time impact process, roughly?
So, I'm gonna let you respond.
I'll need you to tell me how long it'll take to construct. However, the timing of when construction will start is contingent on construction funding. Currently, we do not have any funding to construct this project, the 205 widening project and Abernathy Bridge work, and we're consistently looking for funding opportunities and applying for grants. Our partners at Clackamas County are also working with the Oregon State Legislature and, kind of turning over the couch cushions as well to identify funding.
But so But if it does
But if
go,
it does
how long is
construct,
that
how long
impact?
will it take?
Is it a year, 2 years?
About 4 construction seasons in total.
So it's about 4 years.
Takes a long time.
Yeah, I would imagine.
The occupation of the park is probably going to be about 3 of those seasons. It won't be necessary because, as Brian said, once you get the substructure in place and those outrigger vents, and you've moved taken the Abernathy Bridge and pushed it out, now you're working on the top.
Correct, yeah.
The occupation of the park and the parking lot really relates to the work platforms.
Yeah.
To get out over the water to do the substructure.
Exactly. So the next question is just more for the parks.
Couple years.
How much does this park actually get used? Outside of the homeless?
Outside
The picnic structure can be well used. It's along that walking path.
Well, it can be,
along
but
the
how
river.
long- how
But
much
yes,
does it get
recently
used?
with all the homeless issues down there.
That's a tough question because it does get used a lot for the homeless.
Yeah.
And it gets used a lot for overflow fishing parking because there isn't enough other places. The park itself, not a ton.
As a
Turn it all
kayaker,
into parking lot.
I park there.
Yeah, it's for
the ramp.
yeah, and then you don't put in at the park. You go down other places, right? For the
I put in
kayaking.
under the bridge and then go down the ramp.
City ramp.
But right at John Storm,
Yeah.
At Sportcraft.
you put in at Sportcraft. Okay.
No, we don't
No?
go down to Sportcraft. We just go where the restroom building is.
Right at
and
John
then
Storm, you
there's
put in.
Yeah.
Okay. So they do put in right at John Storm.
Yeah,
Okay.
and there's, on weekends when it's nice, you'll see many others.
Do you have a question, Alicia?
I withdrew it because Andy
okay.
asked.
I have it.
Thank you.
Now Sean does.
And this may have been brought up at your previous meeting, which I was not there. Maybe just kind of clarify for the group. What was the original agreement? Because you said 3 seasons. That seems longer than I thought. So that's question one. And then the second question is, I believe the city's being compensated for you utilizing that space for a period of time. And what's that compensation?
So, I will say I don't believe that compensation has been determined at this point. We're in the middle of the process. So as you know, when you have a federally funded project, or maybe you don't know, and you're acquiring right-of-way, there's an appraisal process, and then there's a negotiation process through acquisition. Because the project doesn't have final funds, and because acquisition of a temporary use, once you get that agreement in place, the clock starts ticking on that. Without construction funding, we're doing appraisals. We are not doing acquisitions at this point. So I don't think we can answer that question. I'm not sure I can respond to how many years it was going to take. This is a very complex project, and I wasn't around to hear probably what the initial estimates were they're providing to
I
you.
believe it was 18 months. So really you've doubled it. And so that was a little surprising from the very first meeting.
I heard it was 6 months. They promised us.
Well, I'm surprised I'm really surprised that 18 months would have came out because that is not standard for any bridge project
This
of this
was
size.
for the utilization of that particular space.
when you're done.
Because I believe there's some federal law that if you take a park and you use it for another purpose for a temporary, then you have to compensate the city, right? That's the part
I can enlighten on that conversation. The 18 months conversation was relevant to the Sportscraft Landing occupancy. The 6F, that park utilized 6F for land and water conservation funds to develop a portion of it, and therefore is entitled to those 6F protections. Occupancy for longer than 6 months requires a conversion process with the National Park Service, of which the state will be required to compensate the city for, and the city will be able to utilize those funds to acquire another property of equal recreational and value to compensate for that loss of the 6F resource.
Thank you. That's exactly what I couldn't articulate.
The 18 months then was
They're paying us to utilize that space.
That's
and it's
correct.
important to know.
And so that's on the southern end of the property. Now, then that's where we talked about occupying for 18 months because we wanted to get the work bridge in and out of there to minimize impacts to users on the boat ramp. The ballot measures and the conversations relative to the north end of the park were occupancies for on the order of 3 to 4 years. I think the ballot measure did say 4 years to allow a little bit of flexibility.
Great, thank you.
Since you brought that up, how do we guarantee that compensation goes into the Parks and Recreation budget?
Yeah.
The National Park Service requires through the process, and it is administered through the Oregon Parks, and there's a contract agreement that will happen between Oregon City and state parks on behalf of national parks to show that those funds went into a replacement property.
That is correct.
Okay.
Good question. We did talk about that, I think.
Okay,
It's been a long time ago. Yeah.
Basically, I'm just saying that you wanted feedback and comments. Has everybody achieved their feedback and comments? I have to say, I was explaining to somebody a couple of weeks ago about the wider supports and then splitting the bridge, and they're like, they're doing what? I said, they're splitting the bridge and they're moving it to the ends. Well, who's going to want to drive on that? I said, well, I'm not going to drive in the middle, I'll tell you.
I'm sure you won't be able to.
More of a curiosity, I'm
All right.
an engineer also, but will the roads be shut down? Or, I mean, if you split them out, you still can drive on them?
So it'll be done one at a time, and obviously, clearly, while they're being shifted, it will be closed. So there's ODOT is incredibly focused on mobility during construction, and so there's a lot of discussion around what gets shut down for how long. What we're envisioning at this point is a weekend closure to slide one side of the bridge. And then you can imagine the complexities in having everything in place to hook it back up,
Yeah.
to open it up on Monday morning or
Well, I was
late
thinking
Sunday
like
night.
Selwood Bridge, like how they did that, you know.
Yeah, no, it is not that.
Not that,
It is
okay.
not that. So
Okay.
we're literally sliding the existing bridges. So we're not building a new bridge and
Building a new
sliding it into place. Literally taking the existing structures and sliding them out and then building new in the
between,
center.
Essentially new lanes. is-
So we're literally jacking and
Yep.
pushing and shoving the existing bridge outward over a weekend period. And you can imagine the fun and experts that are involved in informing the risks and norms around that.
And will be directional.
Yes, thank you.
And only one direction will close at a time as we do this work.
Correct, with a big detour in place.
Just one other quick curiosity question. I'm sorry, Karen. The outside cantilevers, why are you removing the inner ones after it's built?
We're not removing the inner cantilevers. We're actually literally taking the two bridges. So we're doing a little bit of widening to the outside where we can. So we're taking advantage because we're not just seismically retrofitting, we're also adding a lane. So we're building onto the outside what capacity that can have.
I think I might have
And then we're sliding out and then we're building whole new stuff in the middle. So we're not removing.
the existing supports.
Yeah, the existing supports are removing.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, no, I said cantilever. That was my fault.
From a water movement, scour standpoint, those can be removed and should be removed. And plus, from a visual standpoint, it will be more positive to have them removed.
And I'll add, since I'm the environmental guy,
Yeah.
from the environmental perspective, it's a good thing to do. The consultation with National Marine Fisheries Service requires the removal of what they call derelict structures, or structures that no longer serve their intended purposes from salmon habitat.
And that goes all the way to the riverbed?
The proposed plan is to remove riprap, because there's lots of big rock around this stuff, really big rock, from a 10-foot circumference around each one of those down to at least a minimum of 5 feet deep, and then cutting them off.
And the other piece that, on their previous slides that aren't here tonight, he also should imagine standing at John Storm Park. If those were left, you literally could not see Oregon City Falls.
Oh, wow.
Falls.
Okay.
And so that, you've got a big visual barrier looking down the river, and this opens it back. And they had a slide showing what that looked like.
Thank you.
Okay, do you need anything else from us?
That brought up a question. You said adding a lane. You didn't say adding 2 lanes. I'm kind of curious about, as you're going eastbound, it's a very complicated exit and entrance to get onto there. I suppose that can be taken as a single lane, but I presume it's not going to be as messy. If you're coming from Westland going to Oregon City, it's really a messy intersection.
Right.
I presume that's going to be dealt with, and that's a third lane over there, I guess.
there's a lot going on in that area, and there's a lot going on with the project. And maybe, Brian, go back to the one that's the aerial view. That's probably the easiest way to explain. So right now, you're looking northbound, if you will, with West Lynn on the bottom and Oregon City at the top. And you can see, especially at 43, you've got the two on-ramps.
Yeah.
One of the biggest improvements from an operational standpoint is the on-ramp that's to the outside is actually going away.
Okay.
So you're not going to have, you're going to have one way to get on to northbound I-5. And so right now, one of the difficulties you're facing is what we would call the weaving distance.
Yeah.
People coming on, trying to move over.
Yeah,
So right now, there are 2 through lanes and an auxiliary lane, right, exit only. And now, when this is done, it will be 3 through lanes with the auxiliary lane.
Yeah.
And it's going to connect in.
So I can understand adding one lane then.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, so there's lots of other operational improvements in this area, and there's a nice ODOT website that you can go look at that gives you all sorts of information.
Thank you. Before you leave, I'm going to just tell you something. I'm also on the Natural Resource Committee and also on the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council meeting. And of course, you've got the outfall of Abernathy Creek there.
Yes.
I'm going to make a request of the Natural Resource Committee that a presentation be made on what's going to be happening at that site. Yeah. You don't have to say anything now.
Oh, I'd love to respond to that, can I?
No, but I want you to tell the Natural Resource Committee.
Okay, all right.
If these guys want to hear it, that's okay too.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll make those arrangements to come to the Natural Resources Committee.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, do we have any member reports? That's a good thing. And staff reports.
The one thing I wanted to include, we sent out separately monthly updates regarding our parks and recreation programs and activities and facilities. I did want to add that we received back the planning report on the Tyrone S. Woods Park.
Oh.
We're still digesting some of it. It looks like there's no giant surprises in there. There was one little issue that came up regarding the sewer line that's being put into the new road. We want to make sure that we're getting an extension all the way to the park itself. It wasn't showing that. And there's going to be a moratorium once that's paved, preventing us from opening it up. So, it's, if we wanted to connect to the sewer line, a different direction to the south, it would be about a $20,000 lift station. So we want to make sure and get that connection. Even if we don't end up building a bathroom in the first phase, we want to have that ability to do it when we can afford it without having to tear it apart.
Definitely. Okay, so more to be told in the future when you've digested?
Way more to be told in the future.
Okay. All right, so future agenda items, as I had foreshadowed earlier, I would like us to have Denise go over the dog park survey next month and recruit a new committee to work on the dog parks actively. Anything else anybody would specifically like on next month's agenda?
I think on just the dog park thing, it'd be nice to have an overview of what we currently have as well and what currently is master planned for new parks. So there's a full history and a little bit of future along with the survey.
Yes.
Okay. That gives us a start for next month.
Great. We will do that.
All right, and that completes the meeting.